Flights have finally resumed tonight at LaGuardia Airport, almost 24 hours after a plane collided with a fire truck as it was landing on the runway there. Flight 8646 was a Jazz Aviation flight operated by Air Canada Express. The pilot and co-pilot were killed. Of the 72 passengers and 4 crew members, 41 were injured. Our Robert Kovacik is here now with the latest at this hour. Robert.
Colleen, air traffic control recordings reveal the truck had just requested permission to cross runway 4, trying to make its way to another plane that had just declared an emergency because of an odor on board. Now, the audio you're about to hear appears to show a controller authorizing that fire truck to cross the runway before urgently calling them back. And then later, as you'll hear in the recording, remorse.
Truck 1 and company, LaGuardia Tower, requesting to cross 4 at Delta.
1 company, cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and company, crossing 4 at Delta.
Stop. We were dealing with an emergency earlier. I messed up.
So look at the LaGuardia collision. You can see this Air Canada Express regional jet down the runway, then about 2/3 of the way down, plowing into a Port Authority rescue and firefighting vehicle, slamming into it so hard it sheared off the aircraft's nose, killing the 2 pilots. About 40 people taken to the hospital, including this man you're about to hear and his fiancée.
Jolted forward, but immediately, maybe a second or two later, it felt like a crash. These 2 pilots who unfortunately lost their lives did everything in their power to stop the plane and slow it down at the very last minute when they saw the fire truck there. And
we're hearing tonight incredible survivor stories that are surfacing, like 2 Port Authority officers driving the fire truck who are expected to make a full recovery, and a flight attendant who was ejected from the plane and found in her jump seat about 300 feet away, according to her daughter. Meantime, 2 sources tell NBC News the controller at LaGuardia was doing 2 positions at the time of the accident, managing aircraft in the rainy sky as well as planes on the ground, something that's common later at night with less traffic. Investigators should know more soon, Colleen. The FAA says the cockpit voice recorder was not damaged. I'm Robert Kovacik. See you tonight on the NBC4 News at 11.
Robert, thank you for that. And joining us now is Steve Cowell. He's an aviation safety and security expert, now teaches airport safety at USC. Steve, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let's start by acknowledging that being an air traffic controller is extremely stressful. That being said, how unusual is it for one controller to handle both ground and airspace? And as you just heard Robert's report, that's what was happening last night at LaGuardia.
Well, it's very common at many airports all over the United States. It really depends on the traffic flow. So the staffing is really facility specific. And at LaGuardia at that time of night, they determined, over time that they could reduce staffing down to 1 controller.
We have heard for some time that there is a shortage of air traffic controllers out there. How concerned should we be if we fly?
Not really concerned at all because, what the controllers will tend to do in the case of a staffing situation is they're just going to spread the airplanes out across the sky from each other a little bit further. It's really not going to have an impact other than maybe creating delays. But the way the airlines are scheduling flights these days, there's already built-in padding into the schedules. So there really shouldn't be an effect. LaGuardia is really very well staffed. There are only 3 controllers down from being fully staffed. So this was really not an effect from, a staffing situation.
What kind of training do air traffic controllers go through? Because you look and you think there's a shortage. They were down 3 there. Why don't they just hire more air traffic controllers? What kind of training is involved for a certification here?
Well, first of all, it's a very extensive process to even get hired as a controller. They have to not only be mentally qualified, but physically qualified as well. It's probably the most stressful job you could have in aviation. It's an extensive training program that can be shortened depending on the school now that you go to. Some colleges are admitting people directly into FAA facility training programs. But once you graduate the academy out in Oklahoma City, then you're going to progress to facility training. They're not going to place you in the busiest facilities right away. You're generally going to, make your mark at facilities that are just in need of controllers, but also have staffing. But it takes years to come up to speed as a fully certified controller, sometimes as long as 4 or 5 years.
You heard the tapes that we did, the radio transmissions here. The controller said, and I'm quoting here, "I messed up." What will the NTSB be looking at here, and will there be changes as a result of really that admission there?
Well, that admission was one thing, but the NTSB is charged with examining the accident. What they're going to be doing is examining every aspect, from everything that the pilots did to the way the runway was configured to controller staffing, even going so far as to looking at the mechanical aspects of the truck, the training the firemen received, and so forth. They're going to be looking at everything. And what they're going to be doing is, in the course of the investigation, which could take as long as a year, they're going to end up coming up with recommendations. The NTSB is an independent body. They do not have the authority to impose regulatory changes. Sure. That's up to the FAA, if regulatory changes are in fact needed.
But do you expect changes as a result of what we saw last night? Some change?
Yes, I expect some changes, and with every accident comes change and recommendations, and eventually the improvement of safety to the system as a whole. So this is really going to flatten out the curve as far as the calculus of accidents is concerned, and bring us to even a more safe national airspace system.
All right, Steve Cowell. All right, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Your expertise. We appreciate it. We will have much more coverage online. You can see more on what happened before and after this crash, including more of the ATC audio. That's on our homepage, nbcla.com.